All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the show. I'm your host, Daniel Cody, and as always, giving you commentary and reviews on all things wrestling. Before I get started, I want to thank all the viewers who have viewed, especially for viewing my reaction to Becky Lynch's return and the squash of the century, as I like to call it. And of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But let me say one quick thing about another wrestling subject before I get on to today's subject. And that is this. I saw some highlights from NWA 73. It was great. Trevor Murdoch, who I have not seen in years, is the NWA heavyweight champion, so congratulations to him. It was great to see Ric Flair give props to everybody from all different walks of the organization, from WWE to AEW. It was great. And also a very heartwarming moment when Awesome Kong came out to save her longtime foe and rival from TNA, Gail Kim, who looked pretty nice that night. So, what a reunion. I never thought I'd see those two shake hands, but it was a great moment, and because they were great rivals in TNA. For those of you who followed back when AJ Styles and Samoa Joe owned that time in Impact back in late 07, 8, 9, etc. So it was great to see all those things at NWA 73. But let's get started with a review from the past, and that is Extreme Rules 2012. And that was my favorite year of Extreme Rules. That was one of my all-time favorite Extreme Rules episodes, was Extreme Rules 2012. It was awesome. Live from Chicago, Illinois. Just totally awesome. Where do I start first? We start the night off with Kane versus Randy Orton, which was a WrestleMania 28 rematch, Falls Count Anywhere, that got real personal after Kane went after Orton and his father, Cowboy Bob Orton, and Randy Orton returned the favor by going after Paul Bearer, except this time Kane didn't care because in his mind, his true father is the devil himself. But this match was awesome to kick off the main show of Extreme Rules live from Chicago. It was a match that was like Peter Griffin and the Chicken. They went all over the place. They fought in the crowd. They fought backstage. At one time, the fans got really excited when Zack Ryder, who was very popular at the time, congratulations to him for being the Global Force champion, it attacked Kane because he had had personal issues with Kane as a bait to John Cena. However, Kane pushed Zack off, the fight would continue, and it would go right back into the arena and back into the ring. Kane would attempt a tombstone on the steel chair, but it was countered by the RKO for the victory, and this time the Viper got a victory, whereas at WrestleMania 28, Kane was victorious. So that was an excellent match to start off what would become an amazing night at Extreme Rules. That was not also what we saw. We saw a lot of other amazing things, and the other one would be, for another start, rather interesting, ironically, Big Show versus Cody Rhodes. Ironically, both guys are in AEW now, but back then they were part of WWE, as Big Show was defending his Intercontinental Championship, which he also won at WrestleMania 28, and so this would be another WrestleMania 28 rematch. And it was one-sided, of course, until an accident happened. It was a one-sided affair, and that saw Big Show back body drop Cody Rhodes and almost sent him into the rafters. A hand chop to the chest is what he's famous for. And I gotta be honest, even though Big Show, who is just now Paul White because of No More BS, the BS stands for Big Show, not the swear word. But with that chop, I have to say, even though Big Show is known for slapping people in the chest, I think Walter and Keith Lee are going to compete with who's sting the most. So let me ask you, between the Big Show, Walter, and Keith Lee, whose hand stings the most when it hits your chest? Let me know your opinion in the comment section. But either way, a one-sided affair between Big Show and Cody Rhodes, of course, that ended in a moment gone wrong for the Big Show when Big Show was drop kicked onto the table and his right foot broke the table, which resulted in defeat. And his championship reign would be short-lived, which is something that the Big Show would really resent as time go by. The fact that he had been humiliated, the fact that his championship runs hadn't been used properly, and things of that nature. Thankfully, he would get his redemption later on that year, getting a win over Sheamus for the World Heavyweight Championship in October and finishing and completing the entire year as champion, going into 2013 as a champion. However, this loss to Cody Rhodes because of that accident wouldn't be the end of the match, as the Big Show would go for a spear, a choke slam through the table. The crowd actually booed Big Show, and some actually chanted one more time, and he gave him the one more time by lifting him up and gorilla press slamming him out of the ring onto another table. And of course, when Cody Rhodes was finally helped up, it was a bit of a standing ovation, and miraculously he was able to walk out on his own power. So, moving on, this is another great match. A 2 out of 3 falls between then Sheamus and Daniel Bryan, who then Sheamus was the World Heavyweight Champion. So, a lot of these matches, as I mentioned earlier, were WrestleMania 28 rematches. And of course, the Big Show had a lot of issues with not having a good title reign, which was broken when he would defeat Sheamus later on that year. Daniel Bryan, of course, was trying to get a championship redemption of his own because he lost his World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania under 18 seconds and blamed AJ Lee for it. However, Daniel Bryan, and I found this match kind of ironic because Daniel Bryan would enter the ring first. There were a lot of yes signs and a few yes chants, despite the fact that Daniel Bryan, in a pre-match interview with Matt Striker, had some insulting things to say about Chicago. So he would come out, and a couple of people were actually on his side with the yes signs and the yes chants. And Sheamus got some boos coming out. Interesting. However, as the match would start and the introductions were made, Daniel Bryan was booed and Sheamus was halfway booed, so I couldn't tell who the crowd was with. So, nonetheless, the match was very interesting, and after near 20 minutes of taking control of the match, Daniel Bryan got himself disqualified after delivering his yes kicks while Sheamus was on the ropes. And the rules are, after you pound your opponents on the ropes, you have 5 seconds to break. And if you don't break within 5 seconds, you are disqualified. And some say that to do such a thing would not be smart. But Daniel Bryan obviously had a game plan, whereas, keep in mind, he took control for most of the 20 minutes in that match, proving why he is a great technical and submission-based wrestler. He even took a page out of Pete Dunne's book, trying to snap Sheamus' fingers while he had him in a hole earlier in the match. So after he was disqualified on the first round, he took advantage, putting Sheamus in what was then known as the yes lock, what we know as the crippler crossface. So he put him in the crossface, yes lock, whatever you want to call it, and of course, Sheamus did not tap out, but like Stone Cold in Chicago, ironically, in that very same building, like Stone Cold in the very same building in 1997 WrestleMania 13, Sheamus passed out to that hole. And so that would even the score 1-1. As doctors attended to him, Daniel Bryan would chant, "Yes, yes," and some of the crowd, and despite the fact that he was a heel, a lot of the people in the audience would chant yes with him. Of course, the yes chants became famous in 2012, right around that time. So Daniel Bryan, because was the reason for that. But what was entertaining and funny about that was as he was chanting yes, some of the crowd chanted yes along with him, and then an astounding no followed. So it was yes and no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, the whole time. That was kind of entertaining. I actually enjoyed that. As Sheamus was out, Daniel Bryan was standing there chanting yes, and some of the crowd was like, yes, no, yes, no. That was very entertaining to see. The Chicago crowd is awesome. I cannot wait to see that match. I can't wait to see them on September 25th on AEW. So after the yes and no chants, Sheamus came to and didn't get all of it, but on the third part of the match, he got half of the brogue kick in, but because he didn't get all of it, it gave Daniel Bryan room to kick out. However, he went for the brogue kick full force the second time and sent Daniel Bryan spinning like he was on a Tekken game and had been defeated. So that brogue kick that sent Daniel Bryan swinging around in a circle was enough to keep him down for the 1-2-3. And so, because he was a heel, as time progressed, Daniel Bryan would demand fans to stop chanting yes, and he would start the no chants to feed his heelish character at the time. And so, with saying no, the crowd would chant yes harder. So that works really well. This next match, it was awesome. It was CM Punk, again, another WrestleMania rematch. CM Punk versus Chris Jericho in Punk's hometown of Chicago. And speaking of which, I cannot wait to see Punk versus Darby Allin on September 25th on AEW's upcoming pay-per-view, which will be live from Punk's hometown in Chicago and in the same setting where SummerSlam 94 took place. And that place went loud when Punk made his debut a couple of Fridays ago. But this match was very personal. This was a rivalry that started as two guys who had an idea of saying they were the best in the world. Chris Jericho said he was the best in the world at what he does. CM Punk called himself the best in the world. And a match that was supposed to be about who was the best in the world got really personal when Chris Jericho used psychological warfare in the storyline to attack Punk's family for struggling with alcohol as an inspiration to why Punk, like myself, decides to live a life free of drugs and alcohol, which is completely awesome to me. But Punk and Jericho, this was very personal, but CM Punk was the favorite. He took control for the first couple of minutes of the match, grabbed a kendo stick, and provoked an ECW chant because Chicago is very familiar with ECW. But then Jericho would take control later on in that match until he made a very big mistake of taunting CM Punk's sister, who was in the front row along with his mother. And of course, CM Punk's sister slapped the taste out of Jericho, but before Jericho could retaliate, Punk snapped. I mean, he totally snapped. However, there was a botch, I believe that's what the word is called. There was a botch that took place where Punk was supposed to go for a diving springboard elbow, but he slipped, which gave Jericho room to take control. However, Punk would come back and deliver a Randy Savage tribute elbow from the top rope, provoking a Randy Savage chant. But the highlight of that match was when CM Punk went for an elbow from the top rope onto the announce table. But why does it always have to be the Spanish announce table? Go attack the English announce table for once. Sheesh. So that was the highlight, but it wasn't enough to keep Jericho down. Neither was the Anaconda Vice, which Jericho tapped out to at WrestleMania. But Chris Jericho would come back with a code breaker using a steel chair for one of the most epic hometown kickouts, as Booker T called it on commentary. And Jericho, in an ultimate act of insult, tried to steal Punk's go to sleep move, but was countered as he was launched into an exposed turnbuckle post and then given the GTS for the victory in front of the hometown of Chicago. CM Punk retains the WWE Championship and overcomes Chris Jericho's psychological warfare in front of his hometown of Chicago. Man, I just got more excited thinking about how Darby Allin and CM Punk are going to tear it up. But that match there was awesome, and that was part of the reason why Extreme Rules 2012 was one of my all-time favorites so far. But this main event match here, after Chris Jericho had his hangover, this match right here was something. It featured John Cena versus the return of Brock Lesnar. Now, we all know John Cena had fallen into a bit of a state of depression because of his heartbreaking defeat to The Rock at WrestleMania 28 in The Rock's hometown, but John Cena would get redemption a year later at WrestleMania 29. But that time, John Cena went into a downward spiral, and to make matters worse, the next night Brock Lesnar will return. The fans were actually excited to see Brock come back in F5 Cena, and then the next week they would have a brawl that would take all of security staff and the wrestling locker room to break them up, and Cena was bleeding for real. However, later on that night, Brock Lesnar would prove to be a heel, and then after an interview promo he established himself saying, I didn't come back because I missed the fans or anything like that. I came to legitimize WWE, and I don't care about anyone but Brock Lesnar. That legitimacy comment offended a lot of wrestling legends and wrestling fans halfway. And so that would prompt Edge to come back and try to snap Cena back and get him that fire and tell him, you quote, wake up. And so John Cena would go back to his old days by pulling his ruthless aggression, Doctor of Thugonomics attitude, wearing a steel chain to the ring. And he wasn't the only one. If you notice, there was a mother with two sons, and both kids had a chain around their neck while wearing the green attire, both the mother and the two sons. But I wonder how the mother felt seeing the almost one-sided match between Brock Lesnar and Cena, which was not PG at all, which probably explains why it is premium to subscribers of Peacock. The match was one-sided. It started off very aggressive. If you thought 2014's main event between Cena and Brock was one-sided, and this one was more brutal, and that was their first encounter before 14. But this one was real brutal. Brock Lesnar, as we knew, would be more dangerous than ever because in 2002 through 4, he was known for strength and pain. Now he's known for strength, pain, and mixed martial arts. And he used that mixed martial arts to cut Cena open with his elbow in the beginning of the match, and then would proceed to bust him open. The match would become very one-sided. he F5'd him, but it wasn't enough to keep him down because in the F5 he accidentally knocked out a referee. And then knocked out another one, and no one could find him because of the demands that Brock made. However, after a very one-sided affair, it wasn't until Cena finally grabbed the chain and punched Brock in the face where things would begin to pick up and excitement was in the air. Cena finally got that anger and awakened that Edge told him that he needed to get. And so he woke up for real at that time. Blood, his arm was numb because Brock Lesnar had debuted his new submission hold, the Kimura lock, because he's now an MMA guy. And so somehow, some way, John Cena was able to punch Brock with the chain and hoist him over his shoulder for the AA onto the steel steps for the victory. We thought it was going to be Brock Lesnar comes back, and because he's so dangerous, he was going to destroy John Cena at Extreme Rules. And he did destroy John Cena, except all John Cena needed was an AA, a chain, and again, 1, 2, 3. This message today was brought to you by the letter 3. Number 3, I apologize. So, miraculously, John Cena was able to win a much needed match. The match was must win for Cena, and it was a much needed victory. I apologize. And he thanked the crowd and walked off into the sunset to heal his arm, and he showed up to Raw the next night. But that match was very awesome. That night was very awesome. I thought it was going to be a one-sided affair because, again, we thought Brock Lesnar was supposed to come back and be booked to be unstoppable, but he lost his first return match, which doesn't happen often. But looking back, we're glad John Cena won. At least I'm glad John Cena won. And those kids on the front row are glad Cena won, because had he not won, the kids would have been traumatized by the one-sided beatdown. And the fact that Extreme Rules 2012 was not that PG. But it was an awesome night. Again, I reiterate, one of my favorite Extreme Rules. What do you think about that match? What do you think about Extreme Rules 2012? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. This has been a review from the past, Extreme Rules 2012, as we review and gear up for this year's Extreme Rules on September, later on at the end of this month. That's all the time I have for you today. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about the event in the comment section. That's all the time I got for you today, and I'll be back another time. Peace. See you Friday.